Hello and welcome to another fantasy football tournament series. I guess you could call this the Elite Eight UEFA Club Coefficient Cup. I'm going to have to think of a better title. I'm not sure what to word this kind of tournament. But anyway, the idea is that I wanted to look up the 8 countries in Europe that had the best national club leagues and take the current champions of all those and put them in a tournament. So the teams you see here represented by the little slips of paper with the names on them are the current club champions of each of these 8 countries whose national flags you see here. This is only the second fantasy football series video. I believe the other one was number 41, where I did club teams instead of national teams. So this is a rarity for this series. And the best 8, according to the UEFA Club Coefficient ranking, in no particular order, were the Serie A in Italy, the La Liga in Spain, the Ligue 1 in France, the Premier League in England, the Bundesliga in Germany, the Primera League in Portugal, the Russian Premier League, and the Belgian League. However, you don't see Belgium here simply because that's the one area where I do have a disagreement with the current coefficient rankings. See, when I came up with the idea for this tournament, it was back before the most recent ranking was updated on October the 25th, which had the Ukrainian League at number 8 and the Belgian League at number 9. Now, in the last week, that's been switched, and Belgium's moved up to number 8, where the Ukrainian League's moved to number 9. I feel that the coefficient ranking had it correct before. I disagree with the change just because I think the Ukrainian League has overall more depth, and you see Ukrainian teams as a regular part of participating in Champions League group stages and the knockout rounds. It's only really recently we have clubs like Club Brugge that are in the Champions League group phase. But in the last few years, you compare the performance of Ukrainian clubs to Belgian clubs in the Champions League, I think the evidence speaks for itself. On top of that, the Ukrainian League, in my opinion, is just overall more competitive than the Belgian League currently is. Now, of course, national teams are an entirely different story. Do not mistake this for a reflection for national teams, the blue and yellows for Ukraine and the red devils for Belgium. Belgium is one of the best national teams in the world. I just think their domestic league is noticeably behind the rest of most Western European countries, with the exception of the Dutch Eredivisie, which is struggling in their own right. But I do think that the rankings prior to October the 25th of this year had it correct, and the change. So it's a little subtle disagreement. So I went with what I thought were the best 8, which, I mean, the coefficient rankings and we agree on 7 out of 8 of these teams. So the style of this this tournament is as follows. There's no host nation. It's a Champions League group stage, double round robin, home and away type of format. Every team plays each other twice. Then there's a semifinals. There you go. So think of like a Confederations Cup, but with double the number of group stage games. So, after 4 minutes of talking and laying the groundwork for it, let's jump right in. So in Group A, we have the current Serie A Italian champions, Italy, the Portuguese champions, FC Porto, the Ukrainian champions, Shakhtar Donetsk, and the English champions, Manchester City. And in Group B, we have FC Barcelona representing Spain, Lokomotiv Moskva representing Russia, Paris Saint-Germain representing France, and Bayern Munich representing Germany. So let's get started. Juventus versus Porto. I've gone with a victory for Juventus. Shakhtar versus Manchester City, which coincidentally these two teams are currently in the same Champions League group for this season. I've gone with a draw at home here. I think Shakhtar would get a result. Juventus versus Shakhtar, gone with a win for Juve. Man City versus Porto, gone with a win for Manchester City. Porto versus Shakhtar Donetsk, gone with a win at home for Porto. And Manchester City versus Juventus. I think Juventus is on fire right now, one of the favorites, and I got on the road victory here for Juve. And then Juve again versus Man City in the return leg. Yet another victory for Juve. Juve might just get max points from this group. They looking unstoppable. And then Shakhtar versus Porto. I've gone with Shakhtar to pick up their first win of this campaign. And Porto versus Juventus. Finally, Juventus will drop points and Porto will get a draw at home. But Juve will remain undefeated. And Man City versus Shakhtar, gone with the victory for Manchester City. And Shakhtar versus Juventus, gone with a road victory here for Juventus. Porto versus Man City, which would be the decider. I'm going with Porto to pull an Olympique Lyonnais against Manchester City, as Lyon did back in September, and go with I wouldn't even call it a surprise, but maybe a slight upset of home win for the defensively sturdy Portuguese team. Maybe like a 2-1 victory or a 1-0 victory. So Porto beats Manchester City. And what's really funny is that the final standings in this group that I did not intend, Juve wins on 16 points. Porto would be the slight surprise to come in second on goal difference, on the head-to-head against Manchester City, because I have Porto losing to Man City away, but scoring, whereas Porto wins at home with a clean sheet. And because of that, the away goals rule comes into effect here. And I actually have Porto coming through in second. I guess you could say is a slight surprise. So Juve runs away with the group on 16 points. Porto on 7 points. Manchester City, they continue their sort of slow-ish start to the Champions League this year. Also on 7 points, but they just miss out to Porto, who is the surprise. And I have Shakhtar in last on 4 points. So, yeah. Man City and Shakhtar out, and I got Juventus and Porto going through. That's not to say that Porto is a better team than Manchester City. Of course not. CSKA Moscow is not better than Real Madrid, but they beat Real Madrid. I mean, this stuff happens. It's the Champions League. It's inevitable. This stuff does occur. So moving on to the next group, we have Barcelona, Moscow, Lokomotiv, Paris Saint-Germain, and Bayern Munich. So let's jump in. So Barcelona versus Lokomotiv Moscow, going with the victory for Barcelona. And PSG versus Bayern, victory for PSG. Barca versus Paris Saint-Germain, going the win for Barca. And Bayern versus Lokomotiv Moscow, going the win for Bayern Munich. Lokomotiv versus PSG, tempted to go with a result here for Lokomotiv just because PSG seems to be a team without a proper identity, but PSG will narrowly eke it out. And then Bayern versus Barcelona, I've gone with a draw. Barca versus Bayern in the return leg, victory for Barcelona, PSG over Lokomotiv Moscow, another victory for PSG. Lokomotiv in Barcelona, a victory for Barcelona. Bayern versus PSG, going with a draw. A draw. And PSG versus Barca, this is where Tuchel's problems kick in and Barca picks up yet another road victory. They beat Paris Saint-Germain twice. And then Lokomotiv versus Bayern. We're not doing so hot this year, guys. I'm going with a victory at home here for Lokomotiv Moscow. So the way this group finishes is Barca on top with 16 points. Paris Saint-Germain in second. Sort of a distant second, but still a healthier second with 10 points. Bayern finishing with 5 points. Lokomotiv Moskva with 3 points. So 16, 10, 5, 3. Bayern and Lokomotiv are out. PSG, well, Barca and PSG go through. So now these are the 4 teams that will be in the semifinals. Let's get to it. So Juve versus PSG. And then we would have Barcelona against Porto. So this is what the semifinals would look like, everybody. Juve versus PSG, first leg. On the victory here, I would say a 3-1. 3-1 for Juve over PSG. The return leg, I'd go with... I'm going to be kind here. Now, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to be kind here. I will go with a 2-1 victory for Paris Saint-Germain. But Juve would ultimately win on aggregate score 4-3 and get to the final. Barcelona-Porto, by the way, but not necessarily in this order that the 2 legs take place in for these semifinals and beyond. But Barca versus Porto, I've gone with let's say a 4-1 victory for Barca in the first leg. And a 1-0 for Barca in the second leg. So 5-1 in aggregate for Barcelona. Should there even be a third place game? Sure, why not? So I guess in the third place 2-legged playoff, PSG would beat Porto. I'm going to say they beat Porto 2-0. And then the second leg ends 1-1. So Porto will finish 4th place in this competition. Paris Saint-Germain will finish in 3rd. And then we have the final is Juventus versus FC Barcelona, which coincidentally I think is going to be the final of the 2019 Champions League. I think it's going to be the final. Juve versus Barca. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. This is not a prediction for the Champions League final. This is a prediction for this fantasy football tournament, guys. Just remember. And I'm going with a 1-0 for Juventus here. I think it'll be that narrow. And then I'll go with a 3-2 victory for Barcelona here. But that means the aggregate score is 3-3. And based on the rules, Juve would have the away goals count in their favor. So, yeah, 2 very close games. Both teams winning a game. Both teams losing a game. Both 1-goal margin victories. But I do think Juve will get those vital away goals to win this competition, if this were to happen in real life. So, guys, I'm going with Juventus to win this cup. 3-3 on aggregate via the away goals rule. Barcelona in 2nd, Paris Saint-Germain in 3rd, Porto in 4th. So leave a comment below, like, subscribe. Hopefully I'll see you again later, God willing. Until then, everybody take care. Have a good one. Peace.